Hi guys, trust you're all doing great. Today we are going to be looking at TestNG, and in order to get started, we are going to start out by trying to install TestNG. And in order not to waste further time, I'll go ahead to share my screen so that we can get started immediately. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So okay, in order to install TestNG, the first thing we need to do is to go ahead to Windows and we go ahead to Help, and you will go ahead to Eclipse Marketplace. Why we need to do this is because we have to check the marketplace for a tool called TestNG, and my marketplace is loaded. Then I would search for test, then ng in front of it. It's a framework or a tool that helps us, arrange our test better. So I'll go ahead to install it. And as you can see, we can now view TestNG for Eclipse and click on the install button. You would also find yourself on this screen. I can find myself now, where you have TestNG installing the necessary features it needs to work with. So let's just give it a few more time to complete its installation. So the purpose of we trying to install or making use of TestNG is because we actually need TestNG in order to make things or life easier for ourselves. We need to write, we need to write multiple scenarios, and these are not these are not perfect for us while using the actual Java process. So we are going to be utilizing TestNG, and having installed TestNG, and you find yourself on this screen. What you need to do now is click on confirm and just give it a few minutes. It brings out the option for you to accept the terms and agreements. I'll go ahead to accept, and I'll click on finish. Give it some moment, and you can find installing software at the, should I say, lower edge, right lower edge of your Eclipse application. You need to give it some minutes to complete installation, and it would require you to restart your Eclipse in order to tidy up and finalize your installation for you. So let's just hold on a few moments to see this get completed. Okay, mine is already at 48%. It brings this option out, and I'll go ahead to trust selected. It's requesting if I want to restart my Eclipse IDE now, and I'll do the restarts now. So at this point, we can say we are done installing Eclipse.
Recording in progress.
Okay, guys, I would go ahead to share my Eclipse screen. And This is the script we are looking at from our previous session, right? We have installed TestNG at the moment, right? I showed you how to do that. And how do you confirm if your installation is successful or not? So all you need to do is click on File, go to New, and try to create a new project. And what happens? Just try look around and see if you see anything called TestNG. I think I can find TestNG here. No, that's wrong. I have TestNG installed. Click on File, go to New, and click on Order. Sorry, Order. When you click on Order, you see the TestNG, and yes, that means you have TestNG installed. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to be looking at two major things, right? Firstly is we want to look at before test and after test, how it works, before method and after method, how it works. Let me quickly give us a brief insight into it, right? I'll go ahead to create a blank document so that I can really explain all of that. Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can. Okay, so we have the before test, right? This method will be executed before executing our test. Now, how does it work? Before executing our test, which means all you need to do here is everything that includes your system.set property, you know, do your WebDriver, you need to also do that here, and all of that, you need to do that here. Then we have test itself, which is the test that we have written that needs to be executed in itself. And we have after test, which is literally things we want to do after we have executed our test, things we need to do after test execution, after executing the test or after your test execution, e.g. closing your browser. However, I know we have that question at the back of our mind, which is, what is the difference between before method and before test, right? I know, me too, I have that question. So let's go ahead to just quickly explain. It's literally the same thing. However, the major difference is that before method is going to be executed for every single test. You can have 2-3 tests in your scripts. However, before test will only be executed at once. However, your before method is going to be executed every time for each of the tests. We are going to see that in a jiffy. So don't let me bore you and let's get into action. What would I do? I'll go ahead and I'll go to my test package where for one of the projects, for the projects that I used in the previous session, and I'll create a new class and I'll call it login with before test. Then I'll go ahead to finish. Now, what do I need to do here is I need to create a tag and say before test. Then I'll go ahead and say public void setup browser. Then I'll open bracket, close bracket, open curly braces, tap enter button, and by default, Eclipse helps us bring the close curly braces. If it's not bringing it for you, you need to close that. And if I hover my mouse on this, on before test, it would show an option to import TestNG. Once you have imported TestNG and you hover again on before test, it will show you an option to now import before test, which I have done now, which is why you can see that it looks like it has been grayed out now. So what do I need to do? I'll go to my previous test. I'll go to my previous test, and what I will be doing here is I would copy everything here, which is where I have done my system.set property. I have mentioned the kind of browser I wanted to use, which in this case is Firefox browser. And also I would copy my driver.get, which is basically opening my application. I would copy it and put it in my before test, right? However, there's something you need to do. I would go ahead outside my before test or before my before test, and I will say WebDriver. Don't forget what I said I would be doing. I will just say WebDriver driver, and I'll add a semicolon at the end of the line, nothing more, nothing less. And I'll go ahead to where I have said WebDriver driver equals new Firefox, and I'll take out the WebDriver there. What we are literally telling the computer is, computer, we are working with the WebDriver that we have mentioned earlier. Don't create a new one. Now, what's the next thing for us to do? The next thing for us to do is to create our after test, or you can create your test, but I love to create my after test before my test. So I'll go ahead and do after test, and I'll go ahead to say public void, and I'll say close, or I'll just say after test, and I would do my open curly braces again, click on enter button, hover your mouse on after test, and you would see import after test. Now, here's the beautiful thing. What do we want to do in our after test? For me, I just want to close my browser, driver.quit. What does this do? It closes the browser for us. Then I'll now go back up now, and now I can now type, include my test. And what do? I would say at test. Then I will say public void valid login. I would also open my curly braces and have that, hover on my test and import test. What's the next thing I'll be doing? I would want to save the stress of having to go through all of the explanation again, and I would go ahead to just copy my tests from the previous script. You can also do that to make it easier. Then, having done this, what happens? Let's see what happens first before we go ahead to the next thing. So I'll go ahead to execute this at TestNG. And we can see that Firefox browser is coming up. If we give it some time now, I'm bringing over my Firefox browser so that we can see it. And voila. He has clicked on the avatar icon. It has inputted email and password, and our test passed, which is why we can see total test run 1. We have 1 pass and we have 0 failures. Now, what's the next thing I'll be doing? I'll literally go ahead and I want to add an invalid login. So what I'll do is I'll say at test again, and I'll call this public void, then invalid. Don't forget login in this time around. And what will I be doing with my invalid login? I'll be passing in wrong email and password. So I would just go ahead to copy what I have here, and I would also paste in my other tests. And what would I do is I'll just change the value. So instead of sending milk, I'll be sending LUKY. And instead of sending valid password, I'll send the wrong password. However, if I go ahead to execute this test would fail, because our valid, for us to complete our test, we need to actually click on the avatar icon of the application. So if we look at the application, we can see that we need to click on this button before we run it. So I would move that particular button, which is where I have done the find by CSS selector. I will move it to my before method, or sorry, to my before test, so that it's easier. And another thing to do is, okay, before I go into that, let's go ahead and run this test and see what happens. Then we can now talk about the next thing. So if we look at it, our browser is already coming up. So we can see that it actually executes all. However, right, it is very, 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 very fast though. The solution to that is to add thread.sleep. And I would give it, you need to pass milliseconds, probably 1,000. Don't forget, 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So for me, I would pass 3,000 milliseconds. It's going to have a red line under it. Just put your mouse on it and click on add throws declaration, and that would save you the stress. So another thing to look at is we didn't clear our values, so which is a big problem for us. However, there's something we need to talk about at this point, which is priority. Which test do you want to execute first? So for me, I want to run my invalid test first. How do I do it? Go before my at test, and I'll open a bracket, and I'll type priority inside the bracket, and I'll say the priority will be equal to 0. Then I'll go to the front of the other test and do priority, and my priority will be equal to 1. What does this mean? It literally means that this, because it is 0 and the computer understands 0 as the first value, is going to be executed first. And because this is priority 1, the computer would execute this first. Now, there's another thing we need to do. Because we have typed values into our fields earlier, we need to clear it. So what are we going to do? I'll do driver dot. Sorry, I would do driver dot find elements. Find elements, and this time I'll try to locate my username field using the name, and the value is username. Don't forget, and I'll do dot clear. And I'll also do the same thing for the password field. You try to do your driver to find element by .id, and then what you're actually trying to do instead of sending keys or click is to clear whatever you have typed in it. Now let's go ahead to execute this and see what happens. Please let's pay attention so that we can see what actually happened. Okay, it's opening the application. It's opening the application already. Is passing in username and password, and voila, it clicks on login button, and our test actually succeeded. It's a bit fast, that's why we couldn't see it, over time like that. And basically, that is how before test and after test works. They are only executed once. However, I'll go ahead and create a new test, and I'll call it a new class, and I'll call it login with before method. Now, what needs to happen here is I'll go ahead and I'll do at before method. And I'll do my public void setup, open bracket, close bracket, open parentheses, close parentheses. And I will also do at after method as well. And then I would go down and also say public void after my test, open brackets, close brackets, open parentheses, close parent, open curly braces, close curly braces. Sorry, I said parentheses, it's curly braces. So I would hover on after method, I will import my after method, and also I will import my before method. So to save us the stress, I'll just go ahead to my login with before test, and I will go and copy whatever I have in my before test, which is system set property, driver.get, and all of that, to save us the stress, right? To save us the stress, I'll copy that, and I'll go to my new test, and I would paste it, and I will paste it inside my before method. And if you can see, you see that we have red under our driver. That is because we did not do WebDriver driver. The moment we do that, everything becomes normal. You need to import your WebDriver, sorry, and everything becomes normal. And under my after method, what do I want to do? I just want to close my browser as well. So I'll just do driver.quit, and that would save me the stress. And I'll go ahead and I'll come over here and I'll copy my test methods, the two, both my invalid and valid. and I'll go over to my login with before method and I'll paste them. So we totally understood what we have done. The only difference is that instead of writing our test from scratch, we're actually copying that to save us some time, So I'll go ahead, I'll save, and I'll go ahead to run. What is going to happen? Take notes. Our browser will be launched, navigate to the application. Our first test will be executed and our browser will be closed. Then our browser is going to be opened again. Our second test, which is this, would be executed and our browser would be what's closed. Let's take a look and see how this thing works in actuality. Okay. He has launched the browser, and let me bring that over to us. Sorry, let me stop the test and start the execution all over again. It opens the browser on a different tab, so I need to really be fast dragging. Yes, it's here. Okay, sorry. Okay, he has launched the browser, passed the URL, and yes, he has passed in the values. He has clicked on login button and he has closed, and it has opened a new browser window instantly. So if you don't take note of this, it looks like, oh, everything happened at once. But in actuality, he has actually closed the browser, opened it, and executed two tests at two different times. So, and if you look at it, we have total test run, which is 2. We have total passes of 2 and total failures of 2. So we have a bit of take-home task for us, which is execute as much test as you can. Tests, do a lot of invalid tests, prioritize your tests, try the before method, try the after method, and get back to us if you have any issues. Thank you for your time, and bye.